We've had a dramatic growth in our self-mining. In this last quarter was about 1,109 Bitcoin versus about 565 the quarter before. So about doubled. We increased our hash rate to 41.2 exahash as of October, which is the target that we had. And so we've more than quadrupled our self-mining in the last 10 months. We did commence mass production of SEALMINER A3. We've taped out the first version of the SEAL04. We're testing it in-house. It's got somewhere between 6 and 7 joules per terahash at the chip level. It's going to be a little worse at the rig level. So, we're doing fantastic in terms of the mining capacity and increasing our self-mining, developing new mining rigs at the leading edge of efficiency. And I think that's really borne out in our quarterly results.
Bitdeer is coming off of a massive Q3 where its revenue was up 173% year over year as it builds out its Bitcoin mining AI HPC and Bitcoin mining manufacturing line. This is the Mining Pod brought to you by CleanSpark, and today we've got a Q3 recap from Harris Basit, the Chief Strategy Officer of Bitdeer, where we dive into their AI and HPC aspirations. We talk about what all of that means for their Bitcoin mining arm, and also we touch on the SEALMINER delays for the A4 chip, and some of Bitdeer's capital structure. We also asked them about the fire at the Massillon, Ohio facility and what delays that might cause. You're listening to the Mining Pod, and we will be right back with the interview after a word from our sponsors. Guys, there is a serious problem right now in Bitcoin mining, and we need to talk about it. You need to pay attention to this. Bitcoin miners are identifying as AI companies, and people keep missectoring them. Because they say, well look, your infrastructure is clearly for Bitcoin mining. What do you want me to do about it? I'm going to tell you what you need to do. You need to call FBox, the leading digital infrastructure company with all-encompassing cooling solutions. FBox designs industry-leading air, hydro, and immersion cooling systems for Bitcoin mining and AI and HPC data centers. I want to highlight that. If you're a Bitcoin miner who needs to bridge the gap, if you're pivoting or doing hybrid operations, they can build cooling solutions and infrastructure for both your Bitcoin mining and your AI and HPC operations. And they have an in-house API that lets you monitor it from the web or on mobile. So go to www.fbox.tech/contact to learn how FBox can help you optimize your digital infrastructure today. Harris Basit, welcome to the Mining Pod, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Colin. It's great to be with you.
Yeah, thank you for joining. We obviously wanted to get you on to talk about Bitdeer's Q3. As I said in the intro, Bitdeer, a lot of irons in the fire right now, a lot of different verticals that they're working in, both within the Bitcoin mining space and now verging into AI and HPC. And before I get your words on a quick recap, let's just go over some of the high-level notes here from Bitdeer's Q3 press release. 169.7 million revenue, up 173.6% year over year, 43 million adjusted EBITDA, up from negative 7.9 million last year, achieved 41.2 exahashes of self-mining at the end of October 2025, and commenced SEALMINER A3 mass production. For those who are unaware, the SEALMINER is their ASIC manufacturing line. It's their answer to Bitmain's Antminer. So Harris, can you give us a quick high-level overview on some of these numbers and also maybe some of the qualitative updates that y'all saw this quarter?
Sure. I think you touched on the most important numbers. We have had a dramatic growth in our self-mining, and that's the source of a lot of our increase in revenue quarter over quarter and year over year. So it was a very good quarter for us in terms of ramping up our revenue base from self-mining. We did, we had also a $43 million adjusted EBITDA versus 17 million in the previous quarter. That includes a $19 million one-time expense for the tape out for the SEAL04 chip. We also had a net loss of 267 million, but a lot of that is on a non-cash basis. So that's probably less relevant.
Is that related to convertible note or change in fair value?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's basically that. And then, our self-mining in this last quarter was about 1,109 Bitcoin versus about 565 the quarter before. So, about doubled in quarter over quarter. And then we increased our hash rate to 41.2 exahash as of October, which is the target that we had. Well, we had a target of 40. And so we've more than quadrupled our self-mining in the last, say, 10 months. And, we're still on a steep ramp. We're still rapidly increasing our self-mining capacity. We haven't released projections on that, but it will be significantly larger over time. So you mentioned the SEALMINER. We did commence mass production of SEALMINER A3. We've taped out the first version of the SEAL 04. We're testing it in-house. It's got somewhere between 6 and 7 joules per terahash at the chip level. It's going to be a little worse at the rig level. So, we're doing fantastic in terms of the mining capacity and increasing our self-mining, developing new mining rigs at the leading edge of efficiency. And I think that's really borne out in our quarterly results.
I have some questions about Bitcoin mining, but I think we'll just return to those because I think a lot of listeners will be very interested in some of the breadcrumbs that Bitdeer scattered with regards to the AI, with its AI aspirations. So just to recap some of the things that have been disclosed in recent press releases from the updates that y'all been giving for your Bitcoin production, and also from the investor presentation from Q3. Bitdeer mentioned in that investor presentation that it can execute or is planning to be able to be flexible with both cloud services and colocation for HPC models. And they labeled 4 sites that would be ideal for these loads. If I recall correctly, those sites are it's the Tidal Norway site. It is a site in Knoxville, Knox County. The site's in Ohio. And the 4th one is Washington. So can you give us a little more background into Bitdeer's strategic thinking with these, and like how far along Bitdeer is with deciding between colocation, deciding between Neocloud services, and whether or not you're actively engaging with tenants?
Okay, we at Bitdeer have been doing AI cloud probably longer than any other Bitcoin company. We were doing it more than 2 years ago at our location in Singapore. Admittedly, on a relatively small level, but still, on the order of a megawatt or so. And so we have a lot of experience built up over that time. And we're expanding our AI cloud services into Malaysia at around, up to 15 megawatts in Malaysia. Another 14 or so megawatts in Washington State, where we have a small site. And then in Knoxville, Tennessee, where we have a site that's maybe 75 or 80 megawatts, we're taking about 10 megawatts of that for AI cloud. And then the last one for AI cloud that we're looking at for 2026, this is just 2026 numbers, would be Tidal Norway. And that's much larger. It's about 175 megawatts. And it, unlike the others, it has already been built out for a tier 3 data center. It needs some modest upgrades and cooling and some generators for backup, but it can be a tier 3 data center very quickly with the existing building span. So those are the 4 sites for AI cloud. Now for colocation, we are focused primarily on Clarington, Ohio, which is a 570 megawatt site. And we're trying to get that under a colocation deal, pretty much as soon as we can. And we're getting some very good partnership offers there. Customer offers. We're going to own that entire site in terms of, the equity in the site, but we are getting some very good proposals in terms of leasing that site out. So that's sort of the whole focus of what we're doing in AI right now. 27 is, more stuff beyond this.
27 yet to be written, at least in the projections. So a quick housekeeping thing before I ask my next question with regards to kind of the dual business model there for AI. Just a housekeeping thing with regards to the pilot that Bitdeer has operated in Singapore. I noticed that you did book, roughly $1 million in revenue or something for AI and HPC last quarter. Is that in the Singapore, where is that hosted? Is that in Bitdeer owned centers? Is that co-located somewhere? Is that in Singapore?
It's a Bitdeer owned data center. Okay. And I think the annual run rate is a little over $8 million for that kind of facility. It's actually closer to half a megawatt than a megawatt. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. And so back to the Neocloud and the colocation services model, is this Bitdeer hedging its bets to see which one will be more amenable in the future for its business model, or is Bitdeer just confident y'all can do both? Why decide to try to tackle both? Because we've seen most miners just decide one or the other.
Yeah, it's maybe just how we're messaging it. We were even before we were doing both, right? We had the AI cloud, and then we were talking mostly about colocation in Clarington. Now we've just added to that we are also going to expand the AI cloud. Now, I'm not so sure it's as much a change in our strategy as a messaging about how much the AI cloud emphasis there is. So,
Got it.
and I think we can do both. And I know we're quite successful in Singapore with what we're doing there. The colocation deals have significantly less capital requirements and less risk as well, but there's more revenue and more profits to be had from the AI cloud space. So I think there's reasonable arguments to be made for combining the two.
Got it. Can you give us a quick update on this? Am I pronouncing this right? Massillon, Ohio. Yeah, Massillon, Ohio facility fire, and what delays, if any, that might have caused for that facility.
So that was an unfortunate event. The fortunate thing about it was that nobody got hurt. There were no injuries, no problems in that respect. Apparently, it was a welding operation that caught some materials nearby on fire. We have 26 buildings there. I think most of them are identical. There's one or two that are different. And of those 26 buildings, 2 were damaged by the fire. So the total site is something like 220 megawatts of gross power. I think of that, maybe less than 10%. I don't remember exactly how much was addressed, but roughly 2 out of 26. I think it's 17% of the power will have potential delays. I don't think the rest of it will have any delay associated with it.
We are CleanSpark, America's Bitcoin miner, a publicly traded company with the largest operating hash rate, powered entirely by self-operated infrastructure across 4 states. This is our proof of work. We are setting the standard for what's next. Learn more about the intersection of energy and Bitcoin at cleanspark.com.
One question regarding one of Bitdeer's senior partners, or most, I would say, attractive partners, the Kingdom of Bhutan. And most people did not realize that Bitdeer and Bhutan were quietly mining Bitcoin, and that Bhutan was building up a stack to rival some of the largest, nation states in the world. There's been not as much. I mean, I know how to put this. It's a relationship where you don't want it to be blown up in the press all of the time, but we haven't seen too much talked about with regards to Bitdeer and Bhutan's partnership. And I'm just curious if we should expect anything within the sovereign AI and cloud realm with Bitdeer and Bhutan in the future. That's been a topic that's been brought up with some of the other companies in the space seeking for these kind of sovereign contracts. Obviously, Bitdeer has one with Bhutan with mining. Should we see that expand into other forms of compute?
Nothing that I'm aware of right now. And, I expect that, we're not, we wouldn't discuss it anyway. But I guess what I can say is that we have been quietly, but very, purposefully building out our 2 sites there. And those 2 sites are fully built out. We have 600 megawatts of operating capacity there. Mining Bitcoin, it's one of, the primary places where we do mine Bitcoin. The Kingdom of Bhutan has been great to work with. They are very friendly, very, cooperative, and it's been great working with them. And we may very well expand there in the future. Right now, we have basically filled out our full 600 megawatts of capacity. There is a lot of extra power there. It's all clean hydropower, so it's not a bad place to expand. We don't have any immediate plans to expand there, but there's 2 sites. There's a 100 megawatt site and a 600 megawatt site. A 100 megawatt site and a 500 megawatt site. The 100 megawatt site, has machines from other folks, not Bitdeer, but the 500 megawatt site is pretty much populated only with our own machines. So over time, I think we probably upgrade the older site as well, but not in the immediate term. So there's things that we can do there. There's no immediate plans to do anything other than just really mine Bitcoin and work on that.
Yeah, it makes sense. And we'll return to this site, the sites in Bhutan specifically, when we talk about the SEALMINER, because I think the flywheel there between the power that Bitdeer can secure and the CapEx cost for the hash rate for its in-house miners, there's it makes sense that you would want to focus on keeping the mining there and really building that out. It's a huge asset. I think that kind of does it for AI updates. The one question I have before we move on to Bitcoin mining stuff is specifically around capital strategy. So, obviously AI buildouts, HPC buildouts, very capital intensive. Bitcoin miners have been raising billions of dollars this year. I believe like the collective debt of the sector peaked recently at 20 billion. It might be up more from that, but it was a record back in October. And Bitdeer recently announced that it is going to issue a new $400 million convertible note. And it also announced an 11 million private share placement issued to holders of a prior convertible note that's due 2029. Can you walk me through the strategy behind these capital raises that almost seem to be working in tandem, and also how much this refinancing, if that's a good word, relates to that net loss from the convert that we discussed earlier?
It's all part of the same deal. It's basically we're retiring some of the convertible notes, but for legal and compliance reasons, we were guided that it's better to do it in this way, where we basically sell shares to the note holders and then buy back their notes in sort of like what appears to be two transactions, but they're really, accomplishing the same thing as if we just let them sell their notes to us. So and convert them. So it's just a sort of a two-step process to accomplish the same thing, and it was for legal reasons that we did it that way.
Regarding any sort of future financing for these build-outs, are there any instruments that Bitdeer favors over others in terms of trying to make sure that they can pad their cash, their balance sheet to fund these buildings?
Well, I mean, we try to go easy on the equity and go more towards debt instruments to the extent that we can use them. And that's sometimes easier, sometimes harder, right? I mean, for colocation, it's probably the most straightforward. If you've got a 10, 15-year lease, you can usually get debt against that lease, and that's the easiest thing to do. For the others, for like if you're buying GPUs, sometimes there's equipment lease, and there's other avenues there as well. And one of the things when we go for a very large site like Norway or GPUs, we will try to get the customers and clients up front before we really expand there, so that we can borrow against some of that as well. So it's not one thing or another; it's sort of many things at the same time, and it'll depend on market conditions and cost of capital in the various different approaches. It's there's a lot of ways of doing this, and we're looking at many of them. You'll probably see several of them from us over time.
Yeah, I understand you're bound by confidentiality, but gotta ask.
Sure.
Let's move on over to Bitcoin mining, and then we'll. I only have a few questions here because I think you've kind of answered most of them, and then we'll move on with SEALMINER and kind of close with some final thoughts. So, looking at Bitdeer's presentation for Q3, self-mining hash rate more than doubled over the year over year.
Quadrupled, really.
From 16.5 to 41.2 exahashes.
Well, hosting the 16 hash rate included, I don't know which date you're looking at, but for just pure self-mining as opposed to, also hosting, self-mining purely has quadrupled over the year, over the 2025.
Right, that was just the self-mining contingent. And then the hosting contingent, unsurprisingly, given hash price has been compressed, only increased by about 0.3. Yeah. And then the cloud mining contingent, all of those machines have been repurposed for self-mining for Bitdeer. Also not surprising at all if you've been paying attention to mining economics. Should we expect the cloud mining program from Bitdeer to kind of just go to the wayside at this point? Is there any benefit to keeping the infrastructure for it, the software, and then just selling that hash rate when it becomes lucrative, or is it not worth the hassle at this point?
I mean, there's no real hassle in keeping the software and keeping that level of infrastructure. It's not a tall lift or a heavy lift to do that. We may bring it back. There's no plans to bring it back. We don't expect that it will become profitable over self-mining anytime in the near future. But then again, that's not a heavy lift to keep the infrastructure around. But we are really focused on self-mining over cloud or over hosting.
And regarding the self-mining, you mentioned that, Bhutan will continue to be a focus of growth. What other geographies is Bitdeer specifically looking at and saying, we want to use these geographies for Bitcoin mining and we want to use these geographies for AI and HPC, or should we expect a mix like in Ohio or in some of these other centers that you're building out?
So I think in general, you can expect the AI stuff to be focused more in the US and Europe, and well, a little bit in Asia, right? Singapore, Malaysia. And the Bitcoin mining to be mostly outside of those locations. So Bhutan, as you mentioned, Alberta, Canada, Ethiopia, it will probably be a long time before those locations are better for AI than for Bitcoin mining. But you don't know. Things are moving fast. It could be that Alberta turns out to be better for AI, but I think that's unlikely. So we are proceeding with at least, Ethiopia, Bhutan, and Alberta as if they were going to be pure Bitcoin mining. And of course, we always reserve the right to change if something changes there. But right now, those are, very heavily into Bitcoin mining. If you go into Ohio, we already talked about Clarington. That's dedicated to AI colocation. Massillon is being built out right now for Bitcoin and will be up and running very shortly with Bitcoin. It could be transformed into AI if we see that real demand there. But for now, it's fully Bitcoin dedicated. Niles is pretty far into the future. Niles, Ohio, that's like 2029. So there's no real, decision one way or the other there. But anytime there's no decision, it's probably Bitcoin, at least on paper. But, so early that it's hard to say. Tennessee, that's being split right now. We're going to do some AI there, and then the rest is still Bitcoin. Rockdale is it's a good possibility that in the 27 timeframe would be AI. There's been a lot of interest in that from third parties. And so we are looking at that very carefully.
Let's talk about Alberta for a second. This, I think, was a headline that most people, they might have seen it, but to me, it was more significant than not in terms of where it's showing where the puck is heading for Bitcoin miners. So if you think about Bhutan, right, you've got the abundance of hydropower, you're integrated on the nation state level with the government there. You're integrating directly with the power source. The Alberta place seems to be similar. Should we expect that to be the play from Bitdeer going forward? It's like trying to integrate at the energy level or have the optionality as much as possible for those things for mining going forward?
I mean, Alberta really is our first location where we are going to generate the electricity ourselves, right? And where we are going to build or have built gas engines that convert the natural gas that's on that site into electricity. And it looks like it's going to be one of our, or maybe our lowest cost source of electricity. I expect that we might do more of those. We're open to both, grid connected and generating our own electricity. There's different, economics involved in both. And so, we certainly will not rule that out. I think Alberta is going to be good for us, really good for us. And so other deals like that are certainly in the cards, but we're not exclusively looking for, places where we can generate our own electricity. We look at a site in a holistic way and look at it, from current market conditions and the economics of it. But we're still acquisitive. We're still trying to find more sites in more locations. I think our current, we're probably as global and as diversified as any Bitcoin miner in terms of our site locations, and the total amount of power we have at 3 gigawatts, I think, is as big as anyone as well.
So last point on the mining front, and I just want to get this map back up here because this is on the Q3 presentation. It shows the current capacity and a near-term expansion capacity across all of Bitdeer sites. And one that stood out to me because Bitdeer, like many companies who have sought mining opportunities outside of the US, has been pretty creative. We looked at Alberta, Bhutan. They've also established a small footprint in Ethiopia, but I've noticed that the expansion there is much smaller than elsewhere. I'm curious how much of that has to do with Bitdeer getting a little skittish over the new electricity rates through the EEP for Bitcoin miners, or if that has anything to do with what you're seeing on the policy level in that nation.
No, I just think we want to be in Africa, and we thought the Ethiopia site was great. I don't know of any skittishness related to what you just mentioned, so I can look that up. But I don't think there's been any particular hesitation.
Has
There.
Bitdeer been notified about a raise in rates? Because we've received tips from miners in Ethiopia with rate sheets saying that they are going to start incrementally increasing the price of electricity.
I'll have to get back to you on that. I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to SEALMINER, and then we'll do kind of like high level final thoughts to close out.
Sure.
So I definitely wanted to talk about the SEALMINER because it is, to me, one of the more interesting parts of what Bitdeer is doing. No other public Bitcoin miner has in-house ASIC production, and what this allows Bitdeer to do strategically, as we've covered on the pod before, is they can lower their costs to procure hash rate, but they also have the option to sell it into the open market if conditions are right. I do want to ask one question regarding SEALMINER sales last quarter. It looks like SEALMINER sales were down from 5 exahashes in Q2 2025 to 0.8 exahashes in Q3 2025. What do y'all attribute that to? Is it bad mining economics? Is it the fact that the sales pipeline in the US is slowing down because a lot of these big Bitcoin miners are trying to move into AI and HPC? What's y'all's understanding of the shortfall?
It's not any of that. It's
Okay.
really, we are only selling our excess capacity. That we can't immediately place those things, and we'll sell them. And if you look at it was 5 and now it's 0.8. Both numbers are small, and both numbers are small because we're not doing a concerted push to really sell to third parties. Now we will sell to third parties. We want to establish our credibility of our product across a broad range of people, but we're not really trying to generate most of our revenue by selling mining rigs now. We're really trying to place them within our own data center. And so you'll see very lumpy and relatively small sales like you have, up until maybe at least 2 or 3 quarters from now, when we've satisfied most of our internal capacity. And, as we expect our TSMC capacity at TSMC keeps growing, then we'll have more and more machines that we can sell to third parties. And I think that's when you're going to see sort of a significant and escalating ramp of sales to third parties. To read the changes, in these quarters as meaning anything other than, hey, just happened to have a few extra to sell, or we had extra capacity internally that we could fill right away. That's really what it is. So, large percentage changes in small numbers don't mean much. You should be asking this question 2 or 3 quarters from now, when we're really focused on selling a lot more mining rigs, and you see that ramp. Then I think you can make assumptions about, well, is the market hot or not for mining rigs and things like that, because we will be in that business in earnest at that time.
Yeah, well, the ASIC market's certainly been on the decline this year. That's why I ask, because every manufacturer has been having trouble moving hardware. And we've seen Bitmain move most of its, well, not most of its capacity, but some of its excess capacity to some of its partners, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so do I understand it correctly that, at least for the foreseeable future, sales pipeline growth for the SEALMINER is not really the priority? It's more about just deploying at Bitdeer sites?
Yes.
So speaking of SEALMINER production, I have to ask, there was a significant delays reported for the A4 tape out. Is there anything that you can speak to that, or what those delays are about? Is this kind of, we've seen supply chain delays in everything with data center build outs and even with chips over the last few years. It seems like since COVID, we just, the accordion gets stretched out and then it compresses again. So can you speak to these delays at all?
Yeah, I mean, I've said this extensively in other interviews and other live events. The technology itself is quite sound, and we've shown that to ourselves. And we have filed 7 patents, I think, patent applications, and we'll be filing several more. We're very confident in the technology. The thing is, the technology requires a completely different design flow. We severely underestimated the level of effort it takes to change that design flow. So when you're designing a chip, you're using software by commercial vendors like Cadence and Synopsys. And that commercial software works for us as well, but not as well as it does if you're designing with the old methods, because it never envisioned our architecture. So we need to write some of our own software. We need to change the way we use the Cadence and Synopsys software. And so those changes to the design flow, and writing our own software to do some of those things that help our designs, those things have just taken much longer than we expected. And but they're very tractable problems. It's always been difficult to predict how long writing software will take. But the software is, again, it's design software that our own circuit designers use to develop the product. It's not, the software itself is not the end product that we sell to our customers. It's for internal use only. And that software is taking significantly longer than we expected. But it's getting there. And, fundamental chip technology that we have, the circuit designs are quite sound. They are, showing in our simulations that they save a significant amount of energy. But, this is a radical breakthrough in chip design. And to expect that it's not going to have some significant birthing pains, I think is unrealistic. The benefits will be worth it. But I think it's, as I've said many times in the past, it's going to be really hard to predict exactly how long it's going to take. But what I should say is that our groups that are designing the traditional architectures have done a fantastic job. They're down to 7 joules per terahash using more traditional architectures. And that is, basically the leading edge already. So even with the delays that we have on the brand new architecture, the more traditional architectures that we have, those guys are killing it. They're at the leading edge.
That kind of does it for all my questions, Harris. To close, do you have any final thoughts on what we should expect from Bitdeer for the rest of the year? Maybe that's not that exciting because we're in a holiday season. People like to slow down. But what we should expect maybe for the first half of next year?
Well, I mean, you will expect that the first version of the A4 is going to go into production. You should expect continued ramp on the self-mining, significant ramp up on self-mining. You should expect, more AI type of information on how we're expanding in colocation and cloud. So, I mean, there will be significant things happening in the next 6 to 8 months that, the first half of next year that you mentioned as the time frame.
Mr. Basit, thank you very much, and best of luck to you all in the rest of the year.
Thank you very much, Colin. I enjoyed talking to you.